The past year brought unique and unprecedented challenges for us all, and yet, as we have seen in other times of adversity, we witnessed the commitment and determination of so many Tennesseans. Both the public and private sectors found creative ways to work together and continue to provide critical services and supports to the many children, youth, and families in our state. So, as we look to the past for lessons learned, we also look to the future for new opportunities. Let's renew our efforts, refresh our minds, and refocus our energy. Welcome to Children's Advocacy Days 2021.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm honored to be the first to welcome you to CAD 2021. We're excited about the days ahead and thankful for your participation. We have a record number of you all gathered with us. We're just absolutely blown away that we have almost 2,000 registered participants for this year's event. We've obviously had to make a few changes this year. Normally, this morning would have been filled in the War Memorial Auditorium with the bustle and hustle and warm reunions of child advocates from across the state. We've never done CAD virtually, so this will be a new journey for us all, and we ask for your patience as we're sure there will be some unexpected events, but we're excited that you're here on this journey with us. We felt that it was important to continue our over 30-year tradition of setting aside time to honor and amplify the challenges and the opportunities that children across our state are facing. We also love to highlight the wonderful work that advocates like you are doing across the state and all the ways you're impacting generations of Tennesseans. With our new virtual platform, there are a few housekeeping details I'd like to go over. I don't have to tell you where the bathrooms are, but in order to avoid any accidental disruptions during the presentations, you will be placed on mute and your video will be turned off throughout the event. If you have any questions or comments for presenters, we would encourage you to use the chat box. These messages will only be seen by the presenters and the facilitators of Children's Advocacy Days. Additionally, if you're experiencing any technical difficulty, please send a message in the chat and our event facilitators will do their very best to help. They're very good. Any available presentations and recordings will also be available at our Children's Advocacy Days webpage. You can find the link in your agenda. Another exciting aspect of being virtual is our new interactive agenda. As you go throughout the day, we encourage you to click on the names of presenters or agencies. Many of these are hyperlinked and will take you to a website where you can learn more about our guests. One of the things we've learned this year is that no matter how much you prepare, technology is not always your friend. We're hoping and expecting a day free of any glitches, but we ask in advance for your grace and patience as we navigate any unexpected challenges that may arise. Speaking of technology, I wanted to introduce and thank Rachel Moore-Beard from Strategy and Leadership. She and her company have been so incredible at helping organize this virtual event. Thank you, Rachel, for all your help leading up to Children's Advocacy Days and all the work you will no doubt do throughout the week. Due to the virtual nature of this year's event, we did not require the same level of financial sponsorships that our partners have generously given to support the work of Children's Advocacy Days in previous years. But I did want to take a moment and acknowledge the ways that so many organizations have supported this year's event by sharing and promoting Children's Advocacy Days in their networks and on social media. We would encourage you to continue sharing what you're learning during this event with your networks. Our theme this year is Renew, Refresh, and Refocus. We hope that over the next few days, you will join us in setting aside time to renew our efforts, refresh our minds, and refocus our energy. This year has been what I like to call a both and year. It's been a year of tremendous challenges and grief. And it's been a year of opportunities. It's been a year of both isolation and more time spent together. It's been a year of big losses and little daily wins. All of these things existing together can be challenging and confusing. We can be deeply saddened by the collective and individual losses we've experienced, and also be moved by the unique opportunities that lie before us. We even have a little bit of both and about CAD this year. We so wish we could gather in person to see you all. Maybe even a few handshakes or hugs and the smiles of friends. And we're so excited about the way this virtual platform has allowed us to reach more advocates, giving us the ability to incorporate more speakers than we could in person. As we move forward throughout the next few days, we hope to honor all of those experiences. We have gathered speakers and presentations that highlight some of the ways that this pandemic has exacerbated the issues children have long been facing, challenges that many of you have dedicated your career to solving. We see the ways that this pandemic has deepened long-standing inequities in our social systems. We also see an opportunity to reimagine how we serve children in Tennessee, how we can build the foundation in early childhood and then continue to support their development with appropriate school supports and evidence-based practices. The ways we can reimagine our justice system to a system that supports the needs of our children by using trauma-informed practices, incorporating their communities to build up long-lasting social supports. We see a renewed focus on the importance of children's access to health care and adequate nutrition. Amid so many challenges, we also see so many opportunities. We hope that you will join us in the process of renewing, refreshing, and refocusing as we spend time reflecting on the last year and all that was, and advocating for all that we know can be. Welcome to CAD.
Hey everybody, Maria and I want to welcome you to this year's Children's Advocacy Days and express our gratitude to everyone working for and on behalf of Tennessee children.
Despite the challenges of COVID-19, you've served kids and their families across the state, making sure they receive the resources and support they need. This continued commitment by nonprofits, volunteers, and community leaders has made all the difference in the lives of children, and your work is critical in setting them up for success.
Thank you for your dedication to Tennessee children and families. We hope that you enjoy this week as you meet with and learn from one another and continue to serve our youngest Tennesseans.
Good morning. My name is Richard Kennedy, and I have the great privilege to serve as the Executive Director of the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth. I want to thank the Governor and First Lady Maria Lee for taking the time to welcome all us to Children's Advocacy Days and the work they do to support children, youth, and families in Tennessee. I also want to take a moment to thank each of you for taking the time over the next 4 days to spend with us. Our goals for this event are very simple. We hope Children's Advocacy Days will promote greater knowledge and understanding of current issues confronting children and their families, celebrate our successes as a children's advocacy community, and serve as an opportunity for us all to become more effective advocates for children, both in the public policy arena and in our communities across the state. I would also like to take a few moments to give some additional and very special thanks. As many of you know, the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth is a small, independent state agency with a large mission. One of the things that sets us apart from many other state departments is that we are governed by a 21-member commission who serves as our accountability partner and provides broad policy guidance and direction for the agency. Each of the members are appointed by the governor and can serve up to three-year terms for a total of 9 years. We are so very fortunate to have amazing commission members who are deeply passionate children's advocates. Having been appointed by former Governor Bill Haslam, and for the last 9 years, Brenda Davis has served as chair of TCCY. She's done an outstanding job serving in this role and helped the agency navigate the first executive director transition in 30 years. In addition to chairing meetings of the commission, she has been at almost every legislative budget hearing side by side with staff and is always willing to answer a telephone call to just listen or serve as a thought partner. In her life outside of TCCY, she served as the executive director of the Williamson County Child Advocacy Center, later named the Davis House in honor of her and her late husband, Ron Davis, who served as District Attorney General for the 21st Judicial District. Brenda's term as chair of TCCY ends in June, and we did not want to pass up an opportunity to thank her for her service and all she has done for the agency. If we were in person, this is the point where we would ask Brenda to stay on stage and accept recognition. So in this virtual world, please join me in congratulating and thanking Brenda for her years of service. I would also like to take a minute to thank the other commission members whose terms have ended during the last year. Wendy Shea from Memphis, Lisa Hill from Memphis, Christy Siegler from Murfreesboro, and Haley Brooks from Nashville. Their contributions and service are greatly appreciated. As Brenda said, for many of us, this year's Children's Advocacy Days is a major milestone and line in the sand between life pre-pandemic and the current realities of our lives. For many of us, last year's Children's Advocacy Days was the last time we were in a large auditorium or public space with hundreds of people. It was the last time we were able to shake hands with and or hug our colleagues and peers from across the state. And it was the last time many traveled outside of our towns and cities. I distinctly remember standing in War Memorial Auditorium towards the end of the first day of Children's Advocacy Days last year and having one of our sponsors apologize to me because her corporate office had called and told her to pack up and go home because of coronavirus. I remember being a little surprised at that. Our team at TCCY, fellow state employees, and many of you, we were all sent to work from home the Thursday immediately following CAD. At that time, I honestly thought we would be out of the office for a couple of weeks, then life would return to normal. And oh, how much we have learned together since that time. Like each of you, those first few months of quarantine were an interesting time for me, and I definitely went through several phases. For me, the first phase consisted of working during the day and then at night cleaning everything in my house. Washed and waxed hardwood floors, I organized my closets by color, I vacuumed mattresses, and I was dangerously close to alphabetizing the cans of food in my cabinets. The second phase consisted of working during the day and then just laying on the couch and watching hours of Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime. I know there are many of you who binge Tiger King, Bridgerton, and so many others too. The third phase was a little darker in that there were some days where I really wasn't sure what day of the week it was, or quite honestly, when I had showered last. But after our new normal kind of began to set in and become routine and the haze started to lift, there were things that I started doing. So I started reading more. I started working in my yard more, and I started listening to more Tennessee-specific podcasts. And as I listened to those, I just became increasingly proud and understood how fortunate we are to have so many points of pride in Tennessee. We have the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. We have the Tennessee Titans. We have the Memphis Grizzlies. We have the Parthenon. We have great colleges and universities, and hands down, some of the best citizens in the country. And we certainly have our fair share of sibling rivalry throughout the state, but we make it all work. So one of the podcasts that I listened to was Jad Amonrad's podcast called Dolly Parton's America. And as I listened to that, it became crystal clear to me that almost every Tennessean loves Dolly Parton. We love her for her music. We love her for her personality. We love her for her imagination library. We love her for her contribution to help fund the COVID vaccine. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if you live in a metropolitan area or a more rural community. Doesn't matter your race, your socioeconomic level, your educational level, your political affiliation, or your faith. We all love Dolly Parton. So in thinking about how I would organize my comments today, I decided to start from a place of consensus and let Dolly lead the way for us. So one of the things that Dolly told us is find out who you are and do it on purpose. And during the last 18 months, the commission members, agency leadership team, and staff completed a deep dive into evaluating everything we do as an organization. We ask ourselves 3 questions every step of the way. Why do we do what we do? Why do we do it the way we do it? And how do we know it works? And I'd like to take a moment and share a video summarizing the outcome of that work and share with you who TCCY is and how we're doing it on purpose.
For the last 3 decades, the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth has dedicated itself to serving children and families in several ways.
From our work to support children's mental health,
youth justice reform,
our statewide regional councils,
our work through the Home Visiting Leadership Alliance,
our policy and legislative advocacy,
our work with children and families who might have issues against the state regarding the case,
our Kids Count partnership with the Annie E. Casey Foundation,
our annual Children's Advocacy Days,
raising awareness of the racial and ethnic disparities within the juvenile justice system.
The work we've accomplished could not have been possible without many of you. Thank you. With your continued support, our mission to lead the way in systems improvement for all Tennessee children will continue. We're excited to unveil a new look for our agency, one that we believe represents all of who we are, the thread that helps connect the organizations and agencies that work to help create change for the betterment of children and youth in Tennessee. That's not all we've changed. Our agency leaders and staff members have been working hard to draft a new mission and vision statement that aligns with our agency's goals.
To help educate and implement a trauma-informed youth justice system.
To modernize and align services and reports for all Tennessee families.
To gather and maximize data about children and families across the state.
To help build and support resilient communities through Building Strong Brains Tennessee.
The mission: we lead systems improvement for all children and families through data-driven advocacy, education, and collaboration. We strive to become the premier leader in children and youth systems improvement through innovative and transformative approaches and practices.
We are the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth.
As you see, TCCY continues to be committed to improving outcomes for children, youth, and families. We have the opportunity to work with each of you in a variety of ways, and we hope you continue to see where our work intersects. We hope you see exactly where there are opportunities to partner and collaborate. Another lesson that Dolly tells us is that we cannot direct the wind, but we can adjust the sails. As we focus on improving outcomes for children, youth, and families, we have to know how our children are faring currently. So how are our children doing? As we stated in TCCY's 2020 State of the Child COVID Edition report, it has been a challenging year, in many ways unprecedented in most of our lifetimes, but in many ways a familiar story. The challenges are especially difficult in the pandemic, but the effects are similar to those we see after a natural disaster or in a recession. Children's well-being is down across the board, but the most vulnerable children, so known because they are most vulnerable to effects of societal challenges, have been affected the most. The gap in child well-being that exists for children who live in poverty, and children who are racial and ethnic minorities, and children with disabilities, and children with multiple adverse childhood experiences grow larger during difficult times. And this year of COVID-19 has proved to be a very difficult time. Children who are vulnerable on multiple fronts have suffered sometimes catastrophic reductions in well-being. During the last year, Tennessee fell to a ranking of 39th in the Annie E. Casey Foundation's 2020 National Kids Count book. Although many indicators remain the same, and there are several points of pride, we know we have a tremendous amount of work to do for the youngest Tennesseans and their families. During this last year, we have seen the innovative ways that child-serving agencies have adapted to help support Tennessee's children, youth, families, and communities. We saw a partnership between the Departments of Education and Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services lead to the availability of a teacher mental health support line. We saw the Tennessee Department of Human Services partner with the YMCA and Boys and Girls Clubs of Tennessee to provide free childcare to essential workers during spring shutdowns and then continue through the summer and into the school year. We saw a group of advocates work with the Department of Human Services and the Department of Education to reduce barriers and obstacles to the timely distribution of pandemic EBT cards. We witnessed the Tennessee Recovery Project, a FEMA-funded collaboration between the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services and Centerstone, provide referral services and counseling to 21 Middle Tennessee counties, serving almost 120,000 people in its first 2 months. We saw our friends and partners at the Department of Children's Services, who serve as case managers and child protective service investigators, continue their critical work without missing a beat. We watched our juvenile courts, judges, and staff take advantage of technology to continue to meet the needs of our justice-involved youth. We saw mental health providers quickly ramp up telehealth practices and strategies. We saw evidence-based home visitors quickly maximize the use of technology to continue the support to parents during this time. And we saw countless agencies, organizations, and individuals work together to meet some of the most basic needs of our neighbors. And yet we acknowledge that too many children are still facing extreme challenges. Dolly also told us that if you don't like the road you're walking on, start paving another one. TCCY released our county profiles in child well-being in January. We analyzed 30 county-level indicators for fiscal year 2019 and school year 2018 and 19. Although this data doesn't reflect the impact of the pandemic, we see it as an important marker in our recovery efforts. We know that Tennessee has an average of 1 in 5 children living in poverty, with the lowest percentage in Williamson County and the highest percentage in Lake County. We know that 1 in 3 3rd through 8th grade students in Tennessee rated proficient on TN Ready reading tests. In Haywood County, fewer than 1 out of every 5 students rated proficient, compared to Williamson County, where more than 3 out of every 5 students rated proficient. We also know that across Tennessee, 5.1% of children are uninsured. The lowest percentage of children lacking health insurance was 3.7% in Williamson County, and the highest percentage is in Warren County at 7.9%. What's important to remember is this is the second statewide increase in the percentage of children who lack health insurance after this rate reached a historic low of 3.7% in 2016. Tennessee had 4.7 substantiated cases of abuse or neglect per 1,000 children, with Cocke County having the highest rate and Williamson County having the lowest. These county profiles include not only rankings, but other very useful information about how children are faring, as well as policy recommendations for improving outcomes. I hope you all find these profiles useful for the work that you're doing in your communities, and we would encourage you to visit the TCC website and view them if you haven't already done so. Finally, Dolly tells us, if your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. I want to end by taking a moment to thank each of you. It has been a tough year. You have had to manage your own lives and navigate this experience with your own families. Many of you have parents you were worried about and couldn't see. Many of you have children who have been in virtual school and we have all learned to adapt to a young one crashing our Zoom or other virtual meetings. And some of my personal favorites are when those little ones are dressed as Spider-Man or other superheroes. We've invited our colleagues into our homes in ways we never have before. And yet throughout this, you never wavered in your support to the children, youth, and families we serve. So thank you. We all know that children are resilient when given the right supports, and it is our collective responsibility to ensure those supports are there, equitable, and accessible. Thank you.
This year, Spotify told me I spent over 15,000 minutes listening to Kanye say the phrase, poop, poop. This is only the 678, 349th weirdest thing to happen to me. Number 19,450 was when my mother told me I should take the word think or doubt out of my vocabulary because it'll make me more of an assured person. So I began knowing out loud. Tell my brother I know he will not be outside safe with that much melanin. Tell my teacher I know I did not complete my assignments, and myself I know I am unhappy. But if the government is allowed a breakdown this year, then so am I. And that's self-love, baby. I cried well over 300 times this year, and that's self-love, baby. Number 5,084 told me I saw an old man downtown. Grab onto a stop sign, take it, and run. Not once, but twice. I've written, I hope this email finds you well during these troubling times on 31 occasions. 17 of them were to the trouble during these times, and number 43, I had a funeral on the calendar the same week I was supposed to have my first kiss. Talk about a death date. I ate inside a building with my partner and ordered a drink that didn't even have straws 3 times. Talk about a death date. This year, I spent my tips 26 times to pay for the groceries. My dad lost his job and dropped the milk on Thanksgiving, and I still don't know which looked weaker, him or the dessert. If there was a word for 2020, it would be in German. The translation would sound something like, or maybe just silent. This year, SpaceX has made over 20 attempts to launch rockets into space, and I have sent in over 100 scholarships for them so I could be there one day. I know Elon Musk will never see a single one of them, but at least one Tesla will make it to Mars before me. This year, 1,800 stars died every minute, and I can still feel them missing. All my wishes this year forgot to come true, and I can see the carton my dad left somewhere along the now extra Milky Way. And this year, my depression jumped out of its rib cage and stole a kiss from my lips only once, because it never had to let go. And it took me away so soft and so sweet, like an old man with a sign blaring in red, stop, stop, stop. And my voice slipped out of my body like the Little Mermaid. This year, I crushed my fingers on my heavy heart once a day. 365 times I called to check in on myself and went to voicemail. 365 times I told my brother I loved him and wondered if there would be a 366. This year, I told myself to give me the benefit of the... This year, I told myself I only needed to make it to tomorrow. Write something terrible until it's not terrible anymore, and I grabbed onto my pen like it was my lifeboat. And by the end of my 2020, it started to sound like... Ah, ah, ah. And in a way, that's my number one.
Thank you, Marie. We always find your words so powerful, and hands down one of the highest evaluation ratings from Children's Advocacy Days year over year are the young folks who present from Southern Word. So please know that during your time and our time together at Children's Advocacy Days, you will be hearing more from the Southern Word poets and organization. At this time, we would like to share another video from an amazing youth program located here in Nashville called the Theater Bug.
When all the clouds darken up the skyway, there's a rainbow highway to be found, leading from your window pane to a place behind the sun, just a step beyond the rain.
Skies are blue, and the dream that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow white, then oh I can't fly. If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I? You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round. You can't find the fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. And ooh, mountains isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet and move mountains, bring it to its feet and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times All we need is hope. And for that we have each other. And for that we have each other. We will rise. We will rise. We will rise. And I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up in spite of the end. I will rise 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up high like the waves. We'll rise up in spite of the ache. We'll rise up and we'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, rise up. For you, rise up. For you, rise up. For you, rise up. I'll rise up. I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up. I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again.
We hope you guys enjoyed the first of Southern Word and the first of presentations from Theater Bug. We at the Commission know how incredibly important it is for children and young people to be engaged in meaningful activities with those adults who can serve as additional safe, stable, nurturing relationships. So we also know how important it is to keep kind of front and center the purpose of our work. And I think that those several videos really highlight what we're all trying to prioritize with our work. I would like to take a second to introduce you all to Jonquil Newland. Jonquil works with us at the Commission and serves as the Director of Kids Central TN. In addition to her role with that, she is really the brains and the talent behind so many of the videos that you're going to see throughout our time together. But I wanted to ask Jonquil to take a little bit of time to provide an update about Kids Central TN, share with you all exactly what it is. And for those of you who haven't been, a reason to go check it out. And for those of you who have been, maybe a new idea or new information to revisit. So Jonquil.
Thank you so much, Richard. I truly appreciate that. My name is Jonquil Newland, and thank you, Richard, for such a kind welcome. And welcome everybody to Children's Advocacy Days 2021. I would love to share a little bit about Kids Central TN, but first I just wanted to backpack off of what Richard said. As a former band person, theater person, singing person, wow, just wow. Theater Bug and Southern Word, wow, every single time, this is my third CAD being with TCCY, and every single time I get chills and or tears. I won't think about it because I'll start crying again, but I would love to share my screen and tell you a little bit about Kids Central TN. So let me do that right now. Kids Central TN is an information hub. And when I say that, it's really meant for anyone who has access or is a part of a child's life, whether you're a parent, a caregiver, or any type of service provider. We have information on Kids Central TN that could benefit you, as well as if you're a new parent and you have a child who's growing, you can make a profile on Kids Central TN. And from that, as your child grows, you will be fed articles that directly impact or directly have resources to your child at their developing age. So Kids Central TN was formed a few years ago under the Haslam administration. And once that administration left, that's when it came under TCCY. And that's when I became a part of Kids Central TN. We house all the information you need on health, education, development, and support. So I'm going to go through just a little bit. You can see under each one of these categories, there are several subcategories. Right now, I'm under health. And let's say, for instance, safety. I'm going to go to safety then. Then under safety, you can see we have tons, literally dozens of articles, everything from dangers of vaping during COVID-19. We've done a lot of articles over the last year, obviously related to COVID-related issues. Not only do we have these subcategories of dozens of hundreds of articles that can help you and your family, we also have what we call a state service directory. And that is a place that you can go no matter where you live in Tennessee. Say, for instance, let's say West Tennessee. You live in Milan TN. When you put that in, you can easily get every single state service that is accessible and available in that area of the state. So this is one of those issues where, or one of those benefits, I could say, where you don't really know what you're needing, you need to find it quickly, go to our state service directory on Kids Central TN. I work closely with 6 other state departments across, well, here in Nashville, but they're across the state, obviously, and they do a great job of helping me create content for Kids Central TN. So if you have any questions, it's extremely easy, kidcentraltn.com, or you can also email me at kid.central@tn.gov. And I would look forward to hearing from you guys. If you guys have any questions or comments, put it in the chat box and I'll do my best to respond. But I just want to say thank you again for joining Children's Advocacy Days this year, and I'll turn it back over to Richard.
Thanks, Jonquil, and thank you for all of the work that you do and the other communications partners with the other child serving departments. I have no doubt Kids Central TN and your work helps improve lives for countless Tennessee children and families. So thank you. All righty, so it is my pleasure at this point in time to introduce one of our first speakers. The Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth has been a Kids Count partner with the Annie E. Casey Foundation for many years. We are so thankful for the ways they support and advocate not only for Tennessee children, but children all across America. Florencia Gutierrez has worked at the Annie E. Casey Foundation for the past 12 years. In her role as Senior Associate, she develops and maintains the Kids Count Data Center, leads the data work of the Kids Count Data Book and related data products, and provides technical data and research support to the Kids Count Network. She holds 2 master's degrees in education and public policy from the University of Texas, Austin. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Flo, who's going to be talking with us about child well-being and COVID. Flo?
Hey. Good morning. Thank you so much for that introduction, Richard, and it's a great pleasure to be with you all today. I'd like to thank you all for joining us and for the Tennessee Commission on Children and Families for inviting me to be here with you. I look forward to talking about how children are faring and what we can all do in order to put them on the path to opportunity. So let me just share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Can you see the slide? I don't know if you can see the slide or the notes page.
We see the notes page.
Okay, that's not, sorry about that. So how do I do this? Samira, do you want to show it on your screen? Because I don't know how to do it on mine. It keeps on showing the notes page.
Yeah, just hang on one moment, Flo. Rachel, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll get that going for you. Just 1 second, Flo.
And Flo, if you want to try one more time in presenter view, did you have that option in PowerPoint to start the slideshow?
Yeah, so I'm starting the slideshow. I have two screens. I think that might be the problem. Let me disconnect. And try again. Sorry about this.
No worries. I think the universe is well acquainted with technology woes, so I think everyone will be willing to be patient, and we are just looking forward to your show.
Can you see it now?
Looks great.
All right, perfect. All right, so for more than a decade, 7 decades, the Annie Casey Foundation has really been committed to building a brighter future for America's children, for their families, and for the communities where they live, to ensure that all kids, no matter their race, no matter their background, where they were born, or their zip code, can reach their full potential. We believe that we can do this, and we accomplish this by supporting the child's development, by supporting their parents and the communities where they live, so that they can have the resources and opportunities to succeed as they become young adults and beyond. So recently, the foundation has become increasingly concerned about the millions of teens and young adults who are struggling to succeed in school, to secure good jobs, to achieve financial stability, and to manage the anxiety and the depression that they're currently facing. But unfortunately, we as a society often forget about this group and think of them as lost causes, and we don't invest in them to help them achieve their dreams and to make sure that those dreams come true. So last month, the foundation announced that we will be leveraging our expertise and the partnerships that we have to support youth and young adults between the ages of 14 to 24, to support them so that they can overcome the obstacles that they encounter on their path to adulthood. We're going to be involving young people to help them ensure that they have their basic needs met, that they have family connections and strong and healthy relationships, that they have communities with resources, and that they have the educational and employment opportunities that they need and that they want, so that they are able to thrive by the age of 25. Now, the foundation's increased focus on youth and young adults is not a move away from our longstanding dedication to improving the lives of all kids, but it is rooted in our existing effort and acknowledges that adolescence extends well beyond the age of 18. We're excited to be expanding our work to ensure that all kids can thrive and can be contributors to our society. Now, as I mentioned, our focus on child well-being continues to be core to the work that we do. And Kids Count is one of the key projects that really focuses on children and their well-being. This project was launched by the foundation back in 1990 to provide quality data and information on children to decision makers and the public, to ensure that the decisions that impact the well-being of kids, that impact child well-being, were made with accurate and timely information in hand, and were not based on the loudest voice or on people's best guesses. So today, Kids Count couples that data and information with strategic communications and effective advocacy to get the results that we want for kids. We have a national project, which is what I manage, which really elevates issues impacting children across the country. And then we have a state network of Kids Count organizations in every single state, DC, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands, that do the data advocacy work within their states. Now, both our work at the national and state level really helps us ensure that children are top of mind when important decisions about them are being made. And in Tennessee, our partner is the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth. We have been partnering with them on this work since 1992, so almost at the very beginning. And we're really thankful for their partnership and for all that they have done and will continue to do to ensure the well-being of kids in your state. Now, we use the publications that we develop to elevate issues that impact children. In 2020, we released the 2020 Kids Count Data Book and a policy report that really shed light on the impact that the pandemic has had on children and families. And I'm going to go through some of those findings here. So the foundation has been tracking the well-being of kids since 1990 with the Kids Count Data Book. For those who don't know this book or publication, it includes an index that's made up of 16 indicators in the area of economic well-being, education, health, and family and community. And it's really used to determine how children are faring across the nation and in states. And since we published the first data book back in 1990, the country has really gone through a lot of changes. It has gone through periods of growth and recession. It has experienced times of relative prosperity as well as times of great anxiety. And during this time, what has been evident and what we've witnessed is that when we as a country want to make a difference and we really want to improve the outcomes for kids, we do. So when we choose to prioritize our children, the outcomes for them improve. And this is seen in the data. We've seen the teen birth rate reach all-time low in 2019. We've seen high school graduation rates reach all-time highs. Not to mention that we're close to achieving universal healthcare for children, which would be an accomplishment with 6% of our kids lacking health insurance in 2019. So there's still a lot of work to do, but the improvements that we've seen don't just happen by chance. They are produced and they're products of our policies, they're products of our programs, of our practices that are implemented by decision makers and that are implemented by administrators across the country. So we know that we can make a difference if we want. So here's some data. The data book that we released last year includes data from 2018. It'll be a while before we see the 2020 data. So keep in mind that these data really show a picture of what happened before the pandemic, and that we'll be able to tell a better picture later on this year and next. So prior to the pandemic, the economic well-being indicators that we track have been trending positive at the national level. The data show that families are were more financially secure and that they could cover more of their basic needs. The 2019 data that was released the fall after we released our data book show that these positive trends continue. And for example, the poverty rate, which has seen a steady decline, declined even further. And in 2019, the rate was 17%. And this rate is the lowest rate that we've seen in the past 17 years. Now, unfortunately, we have been hit by a worldwide pandemic that has really disrupted our lives. The pandemic has really hit our economy, which has shed millions of jobs. And this reality will impact these indicators. It will impact the health of individuals and the economic stability. So it's something that we need to keep an eye on. And we're suspecting that once we see the 2020 estimates, that the progress that we've been able to make after the Great Recession will have stalled or will have started to move in the opposite direction. Now, even with the gains that we have been seeing across the board in the economic well-being domain, the country is really failing to dismantle some of the barriers that African American, American Indian, and Latino children especially encounter. And as a result, if we look at our indicators, almost every single one of the measures that we track have these disparities. And this is a reality. It's a reality that kids that have the same potential are experiencing these disparate outcomes across the board. Now, data here show that 1 in 3 African American and American Indian children lived in poverty in 2018, rates that are close to 3 times the rates of Asian and Pacific Islander and white children. And if we look at the data for Tennessee, we see similar disparities, with 1/3 of Latino and African American children experiencing poverty, which is 2 to 3 times the rate of white and Asian and Pacific Islander children. So the trends in the education domain weren't as encouraging. The data show that more than half of our 3- and 4-year-olds do not attend school. 2 out of 3 of our 4th graders are not proficient readers, and the same amount, 2 out of 3 8th graders are not proficient in math. And you can see that apart from the high school graduation rates, which saw the largest improvement, progress in the education domain has been slow and stalled. And this was a reality prior to the pandemic. So the data were poor before the pandemic hit. We'll have to wait, but we suspect that the impact of virtual learning, the online learning, the impact of the isolation, the fact that our education systems were struggling to educate our children prior to the pandemic will have us thinking that progress will have stalled, and that gaps that were present before might be exacerbated. So like the economic well-being disparities, the disparities exist in the education domain as well. Here we have data on the percent of 4th graders who are not proficient readers. And overall, you can see that the data are not good. None of these are at 0%. So overall here you see that there's only 23% of Latino 4th graders, 20% American Indian 4th graders, and only 18% of African American 4th graders were proficient readers in 2019. And as I mentioned, the impact of the pandemic might exacerbate these outcomes. Now, the health domain saw some mixed results, with the most improvement in the child health insurance indicator. Between 2010 and 2018, the percent of children who lacked health insurance coverage declined. The improvement was that of 38%. And policies such as Medicaid and CHIP have really helped us make sure that children in the US have access to insurance, and that making it possible for children to grow up healthy. Now, the 2019 data did show an increase in the percent of children without health insurance. This is the first increase that we've seen since 2013. So this is something that we need to keep an eye on. And we need to continue to help support access to insurance for all children. Now here's the data disaggregated by race. And again, you see disparities that are present, with American Indian children being the most likely to be uninsured, followed by Latino children. And finally, here are the trends for family and community. And the trends here were, for the most part, encouraging. As I mentioned earlier, the teen birth rate continues to decline, reaching a new low. We have fewer children who are living with parents who lacked a high school diploma, and the percent of children living in high poverty communities continues to decline. All trends that are really encouraging. And if we look at the data for 2019, we see that these positive trends were continuing into 2019. Here, I just pulled one of the indicators, and again, you see those disparities with Latino children being the most likely to grow up in a household that lacks a high school diploma. Now, the data that is presented in the data book shows that we've made progress. That progress was made on 11 of the 16 indicators, which is great news. And even though we've made progress, it is clear that there's a lot of work that's left to be done. And if we look at Tennessee, we see the same thing. We see that Tennessee has made progress in 12 of the 16 indicators, but a lot of work needs to be done. But what the report doesn't tell us about, it doesn't tell us about how the current environment, how the pandemic has impacted the well-being of kids. So we felt like we needed to put out a report that shed some light on how families were faring during the pandemic. The only real-time data that currently is available at the national and state level comes from the Household Pulse Survey, which is administered by the US Census Bureau. And they have been putting out data since April of last year on how the pandemic has impacted individuals in the US. And we pulled data from that survey focused on adults that have children in the household to tell a story of the impact of the pandemic on children. Now here are the 4 indicators that we tracked in the report. The focus was really on ensuring basic needs. So putting food on the table, putting a roof over your head. And then we really thought it was important to ensure that people were feeling healthy, both physically and mentally, in order to make it through the pandemic and in order to support themselves and their families through it. So what the data show is that adults with children in the household are really struggling. The job and income loss that millions of us experience really impacted the household stability. For example, food insecurity, already a problem for more than 1 in 10 households before the pandemic, increased. Overall, we see that 14% of adults with children reported that the household sometimes or always did not have enough food to eat. If we look at the data disaggregated by race, we see that 1 in 4 African Americans and those who identified as 2 or more races or other experienced this reality. Then we found that more than 1 in 6 people with children in the household said that they had slight or no confidence in their ability to pay their rent or mortgage on time. The data disaggregated by race looked very concerning. 31% of African Americans had this feeling, 26% of Latinos, and 26% of those who identified as two or more races or other. If we look at those who had little or no confidence that they could pay the rent or mortgage on time, 33% of those individuals said that they were likely to lose their home to foreclosure or eviction. So people are experiencing food and housing insecurity right now. Then we see that 1 in 8 households with children lacked health insurance. And we know that children are more likely to be insured if their parents are. So these data are concerning, especially the 23% of Latino adults with children in households who reported that they did not have health insurance. What we are also seeing is that the lack of health insurance, along with trying to limit contact with the outside world, has led families to forego the care that they need. So more than a third of people with children in the household, or 34%, reported that they delayed getting medical care. And finally, we have the mental health indicator that shows that it is something to keep an eye on, and that people are dealing with uncertainty, the isolation, they're dealing with grief, and this is really having a toll on individuals. And we found that 1 in 5 people with children reported feeling down, depressed, and hopeless, really indicating a widespread need to access to mental health care as well as treatment. So here you have some data for Tennessee. And what we see is that after a drop from between August and September, the rate of households with children that did not have enough food to eat steadily increased into the new year. And by the end of 2020, 18%, or close to 1 in 5 people with children in the household experienced hunger. If we look at the data for Tennessee disaggregated by race, we see that more than 1 in 3 African-American children, or 35%, did not have sufficient food, compared to 14% of white children. And apart from the health insurance indicator, households in Tennessee are struggling more than the national average. As I mentioned, 18% of households with kids did not have enough food to eat. 21%, or 1 in 5 households with children, had little or no confidence that they would be able to pay their rent or mortgage on time. 11% lacked health insurance, and then 28% felt down, depressed, or hopeless. Now, we believe at the foundation that every child in the US should have their basic needs met, and that families should have the support that they need to survive the considerable stress and pain of these times, but they should be able to survive the stress and pain moving forward. So for us, it's really important that we take a look at the data disaggregated by race, that we all have that data in hand to identify the impact that our policies and programs are having on different populations, and to see if we're putting our effort where the real need is. It's also really critical to engage community stakeholders in the work to make sure that the solutions that we develop work for the intended population that we're looking to help. It's also really critical to prioritize the physical and mental health of children, and not just of children, but of the adults that take care of them. We need to help ensure that the families are financially secure so that they can ensure that the basic needs are covered and that their children have a strong foundation to build from. And finally, we also think it's important that we need to help to ensure that schools are better and more equitably funded, so that they can meet the needs of all of our kids, and so that they can address the disparities that were present before the pandemic hit, and disparities that are likely to have been widened and exacerbated. So before I log off, I just wanted to let you all know of some resources that you all might find to be helpful for your work. First, I just wanted to let you know where you can access the Kids Count Data Book. The link to the data book page is there on the screen. And from here, you can download the publication to see how kids are faring overall. You can also explore the data through our Data Book Interactive. So if you want to take a look at how Tennessee compares to other states, you can do that here. And you can also download your state profile if you want to take a look at how your state fared compared to other states and how it fared on the 16 indicators that we track. And here, this is an example of the profile. A lot of our partners use these to go talk to legislators, or they hand them out at events. It just provides a very quick snapshot of how children are doing in your state. And finally, I just wanted to raise the Kids Count Data Center, which could be a great resource as you do your work if you're looking for data. Our Kids Count partner in Tennessee is a great resource as well if you're looking for data and information on children in Tennessee. And I wanted to raise the fact that we now do have data from the Household Pulse Survey on the Kids Count Data Center, and you can access it from the homepage. So if you want to see how children are faring in Tennessee right now, you can take a look at the data that we have there. I did want to leave with just a mention of the census, since we believe that the data from the census is so critical to all of the work that we do. It's really critical to all the work that we do with Kids Count. So the data, as you all might know, are really key to our ability to measure and track the well-being of children. They are key to the distribution of resources that help promote the well-being of children and the communities where they live. Those are resources connected to education, to housing, to healthcare, to nutrition, to all the things that provide for the basic needs of our children. They're critical to identifying the need and where we should focus our limited resources. And they're really key to ensuring the voice and the representation of groups and communities that are consistently left out of the process are included. So the fact that the census really faced many problems with this decennial census, they had limited funding, lack of leadership, the potential addition of the citizenship question, natural disasters, COVID. They couldn't have had, they just had every challenge that was humanly possible thrown at them this time around. And for us, this is concerning. The fact is that in 2010, we missed 10%, or 2.2 million children under the age of 5. And that with all the challenges that we currently face with the 2020 census, this number could be even larger. This really has grave implications when you think about resources that are going into communities to serve our babies and our young children. So the census has really been a priority for us over the past 6 years. It will continue to be a priority for us as we look at the quality of the data to ensure that all communities receive their fair share of resources and voice. And the quality piece is something that states are going to have to take into account, and they need to keep an eye on to ensure that the count that you all get gets you the resources that will allow you to serve the families and individuals in your state. So I just wanted to leave it at that. It was a pleasure to be here with you all. I'm just going to leave you with my contact information. If you all have questions or need resources, I'm more than happy to help you out with that. So enjoy the rest of your Advocacy Day. I look forward to seeing what you all do this coming year. Thank you.
Great. Flo, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Please know how much we appreciate you and the foundation for just the longstanding partnership. As I have the opportunity to travel throughout the state and talk about the work of the commission, we always highlight the Kids Count partnership, and I always have folks walk up and say, oh my gosh, these are the most meaningful books and data, and it just helps us in so many ways. So wanted to thank you for that as well. It's a little sad for me because I would love for you to be in Nashville at this point so we could all clap for you and give you a really cool speaker gift.
I want to clap for you guys. You guys are the ones doing all the work.
Well, but please know that you'll have a speaker gift coming to you in the mail. And again, just thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. All righty. So we are going to see another video of a youth engagement activity. We're very appreciative to our friends and colleagues with the Stax Music Academy in Memphis. And so after this video, we are going to break until 10:30 to allow you to stretch, go to the bathroom, get more coffee, whatever you need to do in that short amount of time. But we will start back at 10:30 with Dr. Lisa Piercey, Commissioner of the Department of Health.
So
Commissioner Piercey, if you want to go ahead and test your mic out before folks come back at 10:30.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Perfectly.
Okay.
So,
I'll stand by. Thank you.
thank you.
Welcome back, everybody, to Children's Advocacy Days 2021. I'm Jonquil Newland. It's my pleasure right now to welcome our next speaker. I'm excited to welcome Commissioner Lisa Piercey with the Department of Health. She joined Bill Lee's cabinet in January of 2019, and we are so thankful that she has taken the time during what has been an extremely busy year to highlight the importance of children's health by joining us today. Commissioner Piercey, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm always glad to be with a group of child advocates. You know, I'm one of you. And so I consider this an opportunity to talk to my friends. And so I appreciate you having me. I wanted to tell you a few things that I think that it's probably pretty likely you already know, but it's a little bit different than what you usually hear me talk about. You're usually hearing me talk about the direct impact of this pandemic, about cases and about tests and about vaccines, all we've been talking about for the last 90 days or so. But what I want to talk to you about is the indirect effects of the pandemic. And like I said, I know you live in this world every day, but sometimes it helps us all just to sort of hear the numbers and hear it live when somebody acknowledges out loud about the issues that not only our society, but specifically our children face in the coming months and years. And so I'm going to go through a few findings and statistics with you, but I want you to keep in mind this pandemic is almost over. Hallelujah. But these effects are not going to be over for a long time. And I think people always are talking about getting back to normal. Well, sure. I mean, it's going to be back to normal soon, where we move about and interact more normally. But it's nothing like normal for kids that have been affected by the pandemic, and it's not going to be for quite some time. So we need to continue reminding our partners and our legislators and our local leaders and our schools that these are things we're going to be dealing with for a while. You know, an interesting statistic that I found when I was speaking to a group of women a couple of weeks ago that was startling to me. I don't think it's news to anybody that unemployment has gone up significantly during the course of the pandemic. So in September 2020, 1.1 million people in the United States left the workforce. 865,000 of them were women. 3/4, really, were women. Well, why is that? Well, what happened in September? Kids did not go back to school, right? In a lot of places. And so they had to have moms stay at home. And so we know the effects of unemployment. We also know that women who have remained in the workforce are not as productive. They're not as satisfied. Their time is split. That happens to all of us, right? It's happened to me. I've got 4 kids. I've got 1 in college and 3 in high school. And as much as my brain power has to be attributed to one thing right now, I can't ignore them. You can't ignore your own children. And so those of us who have remained in the workforce, we might not be fully productive or might not have as many opportunities as we would have had we not had to deal with the effects of the pandemic. And if I didn't say it clearly enough, what's the one thing that has affected a lot of that? It's been school status. You know, we have been pretty fortunate here in Tennessee that most of our schools, 145 out of 147 of our school districts, did have at least an in-person option for the majority of the school year so far. And now all 147 school districts have an in-person option or are moving towards that. And so that's a good thing, but there are other effects other than maternal unemployment or other stresses on the family of kids not being in school. Let's just all agree here, virtual school and online school doesn't have the same effect as in-person learning. And you heard us talk a lot about this early on back in the summer and early fall when we were getting kids back in school. There's so much more at risk than their health, than their physical health. And so this whole narrative of it is safer to be at home than to be in school. Therefore, we can't go to school, we must be at home. This audience knows acutely that home is not always the safest place. And in some instances, particularly with the populations that you and I serve, home is often the least safe place they can be. They don't have access to nutrition. They don't have access to adults that will protect them. They don't have access to behavioral and physical and occupational and speech therapy services that they otherwise would have. You know what I'm talking about, but this is part of the narrative that sort of got missed. And the other thing that happens when kids aren't in school, and being the mother of 4 teenagers, I can tell you this, it's happened in my house too, kids get into more than what they should or otherwise would have. And sometimes that's intentional because they're bored, and sometimes they just aren't in a structured and safe environment, and so they have more accidents. The information I'm about to share with you, I will caveat it by telling you it is very preliminary and high-level data, but we have already started to see some trends amongst our children's hospitals throughout the state. And that is evident from about the middle of March. There is this very clear inflection point where trauma of all kinds started going up. And now, we normally see a spike in trauma in the summertime, particularly accidental trauma with motor vehicle accidents, ATV accidents specifically. And so we're always seeing this little spike in trauma in the summer, but we started seeing that back in March when kids weren't in school, and it was much higher and much broader than the trauma that we typically see just in summertime. We call that recreational trauma, boating accidents, car accidents, etc. We saw trauma increase in all types. Accidental trauma, I've already mentioned, car accidents, ATV accidents, falls. We saw an increase in non-accidental trauma. And, I'll step aside here and say, I don't have to tell you about the large reductions in child abuse reporting that we've seen throughout the pandemic. We all know that the child abuse rates did not go down over baseline. In fact, they probably went up over baseline, but because there weren't those protective adults around kids, then the reporting stopped and the kids didn't have any mechanism to report that. So, but we have seen an increase in non-accidental trauma, specifically severe physical abuse for kids that are in dire straits, in really critical condition, coming in higher than normal. The other thing we have seen, and it's a function of usually the older kids having more time on their hands, an increase in violence and trauma related to violence, stabbings and shootings. And so there are not only behavioral health and emotional tolls and societal tolls to this pandemic, there's actually physical tolls to being out of school as well. So to wrap up that topic, the CDC has come out pretty strongly in the last month or so and said, hey, everybody should be back into school, and vaccination of teachers is not a prerequisite, although here in Tennessee, we're getting close to being done with all teacher vaccinations. So we are making good strides in that area. But how does this all relate to your work? Well, if you haven't sort of already figured it out, I'm describing ACEs, I'm describing adverse childhood experiences. And the other thing that all of these things play into, that you've heard us talk about in the pandemic, is disparities. It exacerbates disparities. And we talk about health disparities being related to COVID, but it also creates educational disparities because white children have more access and a better setup, if you will, for in-home learning than do children of color. They have more access to a parent who is at home that can help them, guide them through that online learning. They just by infrastructure, they have more access to online learning, internet, computers, those kind of things. And so we know that not only do children of color already have educational disparities, again, even in a good year on this, after summer break, we know children who are white come back to school in the fall in a better spot. They have less of that summer slide than children of color. Well, now this is just on steroids, this pandemic. And so that educational disparity gap is widening because of the pandemic. So when you look at that list of adverse childhood experiences, I just started ticking them off and making a list. They're pretty much all there. Effects of stress. Well, yeah, we talked about increase in domestic violence and increase in abuse because everybody's on edge. There's been a lot of anxiety and sadness and grief and fear and all of the negative emotions. We've all felt that. You've felt that. And ostensibly, you and I are in a better position, probably a bit more resilient to tolerate that than a lot of the people and families that we serve. And so it's been hard on all of us, and particularly those who are already more vulnerable. We know that there's going to be ramifications on families from unemployment and poverty. And that is very intimately linked with parental behavioral health and the ability to seek out services, the ability to go to work every day. That has an impact on that. And then certainly we've talked about educational loss and the behavioral health impact on children. So even if they even if you take the educational loss aside, the behavioral health impacts of children being isolated and children not being able to have that developmental play, whether that's a pre-K kid or a senior in high school, they have all been impacted from a behavioral health standpoint through the pandemic. We all know about the rise in substance use, substance misuse, and particularly overdose throughout the pandemic. And then, as we've already mentioned, undetected physical and sexual abuse. So where does that leave us? That leaves us in a spot where your work, which has always been really important, is now critical for society. I hate to put that big load on your shoulders, but the work you are doing in protecting and advocating for children is so crucial to the rebuilding and the strong foundation of our nation going forward. So no pressure, but I tell you that to tell you what you're doing is more important than ever. And it's more appreciated than ever because you are serving such a critical role in helping our families and our kids get back on their feet. And so I'm glad to see you through the computer. I'm so proud of what you're doing. If I can ever do anything to support you, I hope you will contact me, and I hope you know I've got your back. Thanks so much.
Hey, Dr. Piercey, thank you so much. I know I speak for everyone when I just say how much we appreciate all you and your team have done during the last year. I have so stolen one of your comments and use it often in remarks that I have the opportunity to make. I will always give you credit for it. But one time you said, I don't want to go back to normal. I want to go back to better than normal. So please know that we're getting lots of traction out of your comment there as well. So if you could hang on just a second with me, Dr. Piercey, one of the things that we utilize Children's Advocacy Days for is the opportunity to present awards and recognize folks and organizations who have just done incredible work across the state. And so in our effort to help our communities understand the challenges our children face and the solutions to these problems, we rely on the media. We honor the people who've contributed to a better understanding of the world around us with the John Siegenthaler Making Kids Count Media Award. The first media award was presented in 2000, and it's typically presented to a broadcast or print news outlet. It was renamed to honor the iconic Tennessee journalist John Siegenthaler of the Nashville Tennessean in 2014, and he received the first newly renamed award. In this challenging year, Tennesseans needed transparent and timely information to make decisions for our children and our families. The Tennessee Department of Health provided it. Whether partnering with the governor's office to offer updates over traditional media, partnering with other state agencies by sending representatives to offer updates at meetings, or making full use of the new media like Facebook Live and interactive web tools, the Tennessee Department of Health placed a priority on complete, accurate, and timely information. Through our internal staff discussions, the Tennessee Department of Health rose to the top of our staff's list to submit to the members of the commission for their consideration for this award. Because of your department's consistency, transparency, and full use of available tools to keep all Tennesseans informed about COVID-19, the members of the commission voted unanimously to award the 2021 John Siegenthaler Making Kids Count Media Award to the staff of the Tennessee Department of Health. I'm so sorry we're not in person to keep you on stage to receive a physical award, but please know one is coming your way. Would you like to make any other comments?
Gosh, Richard and committee, thank you so much. That is certainly something that we didn't expect, and but are incredibly honored and humbled and grateful for. I don't think anybody on this staff thought they would be in the media this much, but I echo your comments because our motivation is exactly what fortunately has come through, which is, hey, we owe it to you, and we want to give you the most transparent and up-to-date information and teach you how to make informed decisions for yourself and your family. So it's a huge honor, and I'm so excited to share it with my staff. So thank you so very much.
Great, thanks. And hey, Dr. Piercey, can you hang on just one more minute? And hey, Rachel, I think maybe Carla Snodgrass is with us. Is that right?
She is here.
So Carla, can you come onto screen with us? Hey, Carla. Hey, so Dr. Piercey and Carla, I owe you both an apology. We have lied to you both terribly. But we did it for good reason. So Dr. Piercey, we told you that Carla was going to get an award, and Carla, we told you Dr. Piercey was going to get an award, but neither of you knew that the other was getting an award. So Carla, I'm glad you're here with us. So wanted to take an opportunity to let everyone know that the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth created the Senator Douglas Henry Outstanding Public Official Award in 2014. Stop it, Carla. Because Senator Henry was, as we said when we gave him the inaugural award, the patron saint of children in the Tennessee General Assembly. Senator Henry received the first award at Children's Advocacy Days in 2014, and we have honored dedicated public officials each year since. This year, we are honored to present the award to Carla Snodgrass. Carla serves as the Deputy Director for Child Health under the Division of Family Health and Wellness at the Tennessee Department of Health. She has dedicated her career to support and improve the lives of children and families. Carla began her career in public service in 1976 with the now Tennessee Department of Children's Services as a case manager. After working in the public sector, she shifted focus to expectant parents and young children and began serving as the Executive Director of Prevent Child Abuse Tennessee in 2002. During her time at Prevent Child Abuse Tennessee, now Nurture the Next, she founded and led what is now known as the Home Visiting Leadership Alliance. Carla broke barriers between providers in a way that many said was not possible. She believed so strongly in the vision that collectively home visiting programs could do more together than separate, and convinced partners across the state to lay down any competition and create long-lasting partnerships. Now known as the HVLA, this collaboration shares training, viewpoints, resources, and information about best practices in a way that boosts the effectiveness and provision of services to families across the state. In 2014, she started as the Director of Operations for the National Evidence-Based Home Visiting Model, Healthy Families America. In this national role, she continued to advocate for quality early childhood services for children and families across the country. Since returning to public service by joining the Tennessee Department of Health in 2018, upon her beginning with the Department of Health, she was determined to bring the vision of home visiting across the state into fruition. In record time, Carla has spent the last 2 years advocating for and securing funding for these services becoming available in all 95 counties. Seeing an opportunity presented by the TANF reserves, Carla seized the opportunity to make statewide services a reality, ensuring that more families and their very young children than ever before will receive these services. None of us will ever truly know the battles Carla had to fight to make this happen, even during a time in her own life that was less than easy. Carla has left a tremendous footprint on not only home visiting, but also all of Tennessee's children and families. And this legacy will last for generations to come. Through the children and parents who have and will benefit from her perseverance and determination. Tennessee is a better place for families because of Carla. We are so grateful for all of the work Carla has done and excited to honor her with the 2021 Senator Douglas Henry Public Official Award. Carla, would you like to make any comments?
Oh, I'm so shocked, and I'm never speechless, but I feel a little speechless right now. Thank you to the Tennessee Children's Commission votes for this honor. Thanks to Dr. Piercey for allowing me to be a part of Department of Health to make this vision. And it's not me that did this. It's all the people who are on this call today. It's everybody who's at CAD. Everybody has fought for children, and children only benefit when we all work together. To be honored in the same breath as Doug Henry is beyond belief. I worked with him over the years, and I love the way he always made sure he said my name as Carla Snodgrass. And this is an amazing, amazing award, but it's not me. It's the people who are sitting there in front of you today that have done this. And again, I say thank you, and we can't let up. I love Dr. Piercey's statement. If we've got to make the normal better, we can't go back. We have to go forward. Thank you. Thanks to Richard and your staff. You've always been tremendous supporters of children, and I appreciate this honor. Thank you.
Great. Well, congratulations, Carla and Dr. Piercey. I'm sorry we had to lie to you, but I hope it was worth it. And thank you both for taking the time to be with us this morning, and congratulations.
Thank you all.
All righty. So next up on our agenda, and it is my great privilege to introduce and welcome Laura Berlin to talk with us about the roots of a thriving Tennessee. Laura Berlin is the founding executive director of the Sycamore Institute, an independent, nonpartisan public policy research center for Tennessee. She has 20 years experience in public finance and nonprofit leadership in both New York and Nashville. She has a career marked by a commitment to data-driven decision-making and bringing diverse points of view together around complex problems. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to one of my favorite people and one of the smartest people I know, Laura Berlin. So Laura, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Richard. Thanks for the warm welcome. I'm really, really excited to be here and to help us round out what's the first day of Children's Advocacy Days. I am going to go to share my screen so I can show you some images. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Fantastic. Okay, so again, it's really wonderful to be with you this morning. I think I've been coming to Children's Advocacy Days since 2012, since my first year at Renewal House. And it's always a fantastic event, right? And I'm sorry that we're not in person because it's always a chance to walk into War Memorial and connect with old friends, usually make some new friends, to learn about new issues that other people are working about, to hear from our leaders like Dr. Piercey, who've been on the front lines of the pandemic, and in addition to all the other issues that we're dealing with in Tennessee. And most importantly, and I hope that this will be a part of the next kind of 40 minutes together, is that really it's a moment to celebrate the promise and the hope of Tennessee's children and youth. But I have to say, I'm coming this year with a bit of both a heavy heart and an unrelenting sense of hope for the future. We're definitely living through a really difficult and very strange and complicated moment right now. And Tennessee's children and families are facing unprecedented challenges for sure. And social media and short attention spans and the fast-paced media cycle, all of these things make long-term thinking about the well-being of our children, nuanced problem solving, this kind of thing more difficult, right? Now, if there's one thing that I think can bring us all together and one singularly good reason to help us slow down, to stay focused on what's really important for Tennessee, it's the future of our children. And I have the great joy of being the mother of these two magnificent kiddos. And here they are. This was a flying spacecraft they created out of cardboard boxes and duct tape a little while back. And then there's a picture of an afternoon fishing trip we had together, which I think, to be sure, was an adventure for both the kids and the boarfish. And then there's an annual silly shot that we take every New Year's Eve because we can't ever get around to doing a winter holiday family photo. And I show you these photos at the beginning of a talk, mostly because what I want to talk about today in the roots of a thriving Tennessee is that we all basically want the same things, right? For ourselves, for the people we care about, for our communities, and for our great state of Tennessee. We want to be happy and healthy. We want to be economically self-sufficient. We want to feel like our lives have meaning and purpose, right? But I also think that we might need some new frames and tools. We need new ways to talk about the challenges in perhaps a slightly more authentic way. And we need some new strategies to navigate the complexity and the nuance that is absolutely necessary to making some improvement for our kids and families. We need some tools that really help us challenge our own assumptions and maybe see things in a new way that we've never considered before. So here's kind of roughly what I want to do with our time together. I used to make jokes about being the before lunch speaker, but now that so many of us are working through our computer screens, you can get up and get lunch or your snack whenever you'd like. But here's the agenda of what I'm going to go through. First, I'm going to tell you about the Sycamore Institute, kind of the who, the what, and maybe most importantly, the why of the Sycamore Institute. For folks in Tennessee, I want you to leave this session making sure that you understand the resources that are available to you with the staff and the research at Sycamore. And for folks outside Tennessee, Sycamore's model and approach might be of interest to you because it's unique in many ways. Next, you've already had a rigorous look at the facts and the figures with Annie Casey and with Dr. Piercey from the Department of Health this morning, but I want to try to put some history and context around some of those numbers that you've seen and heard, and that you'll continue to see and hear in the coming months and years for sure. Next, I want to talk about economic impact and walk you through an analysis we did on the economic impact of ACEs in Tennessee. Because the reality is there's a cost that we pay when kids and families experience unmitigated trauma. Then at the back end of the session, what I want to do is show you two of the frames or models that the Sycamore team uses to get up that metaphorical stream. Right? These are tools that we use to have productive conversations about the roots of complicated issues. You know, as the metaphor goes, we can continue to work downstream and address the unrelenting need to fish struggling folks out of the river, or we can also send some of our resources upstream and try to get at what's tossing them in the river in the first place. You know, it's not an either or question really, but a both and sort of proposition. And then lastly, I want to close out, really land us in a good spot with some thoughts about hope and promise for the future of kids and youth in Tennessee. All right, so first, what is the Sycamore Institute? Big picture. So we were founded in 2015, so a little more than 5 years ago, and we are an independent, nonpartisan public policy research center for Tennessee. Our mission officially is to provide accessible, reliable data and research in the pursuit of sound, sustainable policies that improve the lives of all Tennesseans. Our vision, right, when we can say that our work is done and we can close up shop, is when we have a thriving Tennessee whose top priority is the health and prosperity of each citizen. Now, what does that mean in the day-to-day? What do we do? What are our products and services, for lack of a better term? First and foremost, we do research, right? We just celebrated completing our 150th research project. And for a small independent think tank of only 5 people, that's a lot. Our research really covers a wide range of issues, right? So this morning I'm going to talk about health and ACEs and economic mobility, but our research really spans a wider range of topics. So we do a lot on state budget and taxes, health and healthcare, criminal justice, opioids, and most recently over the last couple of years have really dug deep into financial security and economic mobility issues. The depth and breadth of the work ranges. So sometimes we pop up a quick blog post, and then other times we wade deep, deep, deep into the details because we really believe on complicated issues, the details and the nuance really matter. So that's the research half of what we do. On the other side of what we do is really what we largely group together as community engagement work. It means that we teach classes, we give talks, our staff do workshops throughout the community across the state. We host events, so that can be policy conversations about a research paper that we've done, or it can mean bringing in local experts on panel discussions so that they can really bring their experience to the conversation and connect the research with what's happening on the ground for Tennessee families. We also provide technical assistance to other groups, so especially ones that don't have the capacity to analyze lots of data or do a deep policy analysis. We'll step up and help them with their particular questions. We do much the same with our policymakers and their staff members and the people who work around them. And then lastly, in this bucket of community engagement work, we do a lot of media work, right? So there's only so far that a small think tank can get with our message. And so we really rely on the media to communicate some of what's in our research out to the broader public. And so we give as much time as we can to our journalist friends to make sure that they're able to report comprehensively and accurately on the issues of importance in our state. All right, so our purpose, right? Overall, what does all of that mean? It means that our purpose is to help policymakers, the media, and the public understand complex issues that affect and connect Tennesseans' health and prosperity. And at the end of the day, we want people to understand that public policy is about people, right? Policy affects and is relevant to all of us in almost everything that we do, right? Take this morning, if you, oops, hold on. Hang on. Nothing like a good technology glitch. There we go. All right, so the example I was going to use, public policy affects all of us. So if you brushed your teeth this morning, you benefited from a public policy decision that was made in the 50s to fluoridate the water that flows through your taps. If you put milk in your coffee or on your cereal, you know that as a public policy, it was properly pasteurized, and it's not going to make you sick. You know, whether you're tuning in from your office or from your home, you know that the building that you're sitting in was inspected for some level of adherence to safety standards. These are all ways that public policy affects us, right? It's about all of us, and it's in our lives in so many different ways. Now, I want to take just a minute before I jump off into the data to talk about Sycamore's approach, because it's unique, particularly in the universe of state-level think tanks. Our work, generally speaking, since the beginning has been grounded in three basic elements or three questions. And our ability to deliver on these elements well has really helped us build trust and integrity with our stakeholders across the political spectrum. So first, at the center of everything we do is it accurate? Did we get everything right, including the complexities that are necessary for understanding difficult issues? Did we paint the whole and complete picture? I think about the image when we start a new project, we walk into a stadium and we flip all the lights on and we see what's there. We want to get the whole picture, the context, everything, and we want to get it right. That's really important. Secondly, we ask ourselves, is what we're writing and what we're saying apolitical? Meaning we work hard to avoid language and lenses that distract people based on what their political leanings are. And I'm often asked, how do you do that at the Sycamore Institute? And the answer is that our people, our staff and our board come from across the political spectrum. And we agree to listen to one another and challenge one another in our thinking. Our team, incredibly talented team, is full of people who believe in lifelong learning, right? We're committed to understanding different points of view, and we remain open to the idea that someone could change our minds at some point about something and cause us to shift maybe a little bit, particularly in the face of new information or new data. The team teases me because I'll say my perfect day at work is when someone says, I've been doing this for a really long time and I never quite thought about it that way. But for me, those are moments where we have opportunities to evolve in our thinking and create better opportunities and a better future, particularly for our kids and families. All right, lastly, is the work accessible is something that's really important to us. And there's kind of two meanings to accessibility here. First, is it available to everyone? And the answer is yes. 100% of our work is up and available on our website. You can find any of our research. And if you ever have trouble finding it, send us an email or text or touch base with us on social media, and we'll make sure that you get what you're looking for. But secondly, and maybe more important, is that we want to make sure that we write and we communicate in a way that non-experts can understand. Right, so that means we try to avoid the alphabet soup of acronyms and the industry jargon that we all fall into. Public policy is for all of us, and really part of Sycamore's purpose is to help everyone understand the issues and help participate in the process. Okay, last introductory thought before we jump into the information for today. Now, I went to public policy school, And in public policy school, we learn to ask several key questions when we're approaching any big policy decision, program decision, service delivery decision. And the first one is, will the policy or the practice or the service achieve our goals and serve our state? In this case, when we're talking about children and youth, are the policies we're pursuing or considering pursuing for the future achieving the goals that we have for our children and youth? Secondly, what does the policy say about who we are as people and who we are as leaders? And this is a question that has stuck with me over my 2 decades of working in policy and around really complex issues. Thirdly, can we implement the policy as we envisioned it? Right, so we have lots of fantastic ideas and ambitious dreams about how we want our state to look. But if we can't actually implement them, if we don't have the tools and the resources and the ability, then those great ideas stay on a shelf and they never become a reality. So as we move through the rest of the presentation today, think about these 3 questions and how you would answer them as you approach your job and your work. Because for me, when I think about the future, I often wonder, what do I want it to say about my decisions and my actions that I'm taking today? Okay, facts and figures. So Sycamore is often asked to present facts and figures on how Tennessee is doing, right? What's the status of our health? How are we doing in education? How are we doing on infrastructure? What's going on with the state budget? How healthy is the financial management of our state? Is the rainy day fund large enough to cover losses should we need to tap it? And when you compare Tennessee to other states, our conservative fiscal management, for example, generates positive incomes, or outcomes rather, positive incomes too. Outcomes like we have a balanced budget, right? Right now, you're not seeing the headlines about Tennessee's budget being in crisis the way you are in other states. You see things like the maintained AAA credit rating. The rating agencies repeatedly confirm their confidence that Tennessee is going to be able to make its debt service payments. We have a low per capita tax burden, in fact, one of the lowest in the state. And we've made some good gains in education and small reductions in infant mortality and noticeable improvements in youth tobacco use. You saw a lot of that in the Annie E. Casey Foundation presentation just a few minutes ago. And we're really good about advertising these benefits when we're recruiting new companies to the state. And it really is important that we celebrate those milestones and those improvements. But the data also show us that we have a lot of challenges in Tennessee too. And it's not just about COVID. We are less healthy than the rest of the country in general. And we still struggle with education outcomes. So you can look at K-12 test scores and you can look at higher ed completion rates. Education is not something that we're doing as well as we would like to be. We also have large gaps when we sort the data by geography, so urban and rural, by county, by race and ethnicity, by gender, and by income levels. Now, many of you who know me or know other members of our team have seen Sycamore do presentations on this, or if you haven't, you might in the near future. What I want to do today is something slightly different. So what I want to do is take those numbers and put them into historical context, and then offer a way for us to frame them up as opportunities, not just the challenges and the hardships that we face with our children and youth. So one way to put context on outcome data is to look at state rankings, or how we stack up against other states. And in 2020, Tennessee, as you've heard earlier, was ranked 39th in the Kids County Child Wellbeing Rankings, right? So there it is, the green dot there. And since they started ranking states in 2000, Tennessee has never made it higher than 35. Infant mortality numbers have consistently put Tennessee in the bottom 30% of states, which you're seeing there in the brown line. Our grade 4 reading proficiency on national achievement tests, there in the blue, also in the bottom half. Youth tobacco use, there in the teal, and child poverty in the pink there. Now, like I said before, rankings can mask improvement, especially as all states figure out how to address challenges in a more effective way. And over the last 30 years that you're seeing on this slide, innovative strategies and improvements have certainly been implemented. My point here is not to be a downer, but really is just to give us some time and space to say, these are long-standing challenges that go back decades, and we're not where we need to be. It's perhaps time that we be willing to try some new things and look at some of these issues in a slightly different way. Okay, so economic impact. Let's turn to a specific study that Sycamore did on the economic impact of ACEs in Tennessee. I suspect I don't need to explain what adverse childhood experiences are to this group, but just in case we've got some newcomers, we always want to be welcoming to people understanding this research because it's really important and impactful for not just Tennessee, but I think the entire country. So the adverse childhood experience study is one of the largest investigations of its kind. The original one was done in Southern California by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente about 25 years ago. It was a scientifically robust and statistically significant study about the impact of childhood trauma on long-term outcomes. The study included both a physical exam of the patients and then a confidential survey with over 17,000 patients. Again, one of the largest studies of its kind. And the survey asked the patients about 10 types of trauma that fall into roughly these categories that Dr. Piercey described. So abuse, neglect, and various types of household dysfunction, mental illness, or having a relative that's incarcerated. And what was interesting about this study is they analyzed disease rates, not just the conditions like addiction and depression and obesity, problems that you might predict would follow trauma. They also looked at other conditions like cardiovascular disease and cancer and stroke and diabetes. And what they found was a graded and dose response relationship, meaning the more trauma a person has survived, the more disease burden can be accumulated up to and including premature death, right? So if you had 4 or more of these ACEs listed on the slide, you could be at twice the risk of heart disease or cancer, 7 times the risk of addiction to alcohol, and 12 times the risk of attempted suicide. So when I first learned about this study, it was about the time I first started coming to Children's Advocacy Days. And I was working at a residential addiction treatment center for women and their children. And it was like overnight, I finally had the science to explain what we were seeing in our clinics. We could explain it to the women as patients, and we could explain it to our funders and to the community that we were serving. It was really an amazing light bulb that came on. And here's what it looks like over the course of someone's lifetime from conception to death. You know, ACEs generate toxic levels of stress. And you start at the bottom of this pyramid here. The neuroscience tells us that toxic stress can lead to disrupted neurodevelopment. The analogy I think we developed with the commission and the Frameworks Institute was thinking about building a house. And at this very first level, if you've got a foundation that's cracked, you build a house on a cracked foundation and you're going to have trouble later in life. And the same thing applies to this brain science. As you move up the pyramid, disrupted healthy development can lead to social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. So that can turn up showing having trouble in school, for example. And the level of impairment can lead to the adoption of risky health behaviors, right? So smoking, drinking, drugs, violence, other types of behaviors. And over a lifetime, those behaviors can create and perpetuate socioeconomic problems, disease, and disability, right? Smoking can lead to lung cancer, addiction, inability to complete school, unemployment, or even trouble with performance once you have a job. Then, of course, at the top, disease and dysfunction can also lead to premature death. And what does that mean for our communities? And what did that mean for the study that the Sycamore did about the economic impact of ACEs? Is that it means you have years lost as parents, teachers, employers, caregivers, and taxpayers, right? The science is really compelling here. We need to think about complex issues in broader and longer terms. Supporting healthy, thriving kids is about a wide range of interrelated and mutually influential factors. We cannot address the upstream root causes of our poor outcomes by looking at our issues in silos. All right, so turning to ACEs specific to Tennessee, what you're looking at here is the prevalence of the 10 specific ACEs among Tennessee adults. This was measured 2014 to 2017. And what you see is that 40% of Tennesseans have no ACEs at all, but almost 1 in 5 experienced 4 or more ACEs, right? And remember the dose response relationship. The more ACEs we have in our communities, the higher risk we have for poor outcomes in health, education, and socioeconomic stability and mobility. Continuing to look at the data in Tennessee, what you see here is the prevalence of each ACE in Tennessee, at least as they were defined in the original study. And divorce, or the separation of parents, is the most prevalent for our state, followed by emotional abuse, and then substance abuse by a household member. I would say, as an aside, subsequent and separate ACE studies have been conducted and included additional types of traumatic experiences. So discrimination based on race or skin color, and experiences with community violence, or some of the other types of trauma they've included. And to my knowledge, to date, these studies have all confirmed this dose response finding of the original study. All right, here, what we're looking at is the relationship, again, with Tennessee data, between ACEs and combustible tobacco consumption. So adults with more ACEs are more likely to smoke tobacco. With no ACEs, 15% reported smoking. With 4 or more ACEs, as you move right and up the screen, 37% of Tennessee adults reported smoking. Smoking, as we all know, is one of the deadliest health behaviors. And of the 95 counties in Tennessee, for example, only 1 has a rate of smoking that is less than our national average. So it's a particularly large problem in Tennessee. Next, and kind of the last specific one I'll show you, is the relationship between ACEs and depression. So for Tennesseans, again, with no ACEs, about 13% reported depression. And for Tennesseans with 4 or more ACEs, 44% reported depression. Now, depression can pose a wide range of challenges to both individuals who suffer from it and for their families. So that can materialize in things like difficulty completing education or advanced training opportunities. It can look like challenges of taking care of your children, or maybe taking care of aging parents. It's something that is problematic in so many different aspects of our lives. Okay, I want to back up just a second and take a look at these data in a slightly different way. Now, this bar chart reflects the estimated proportion of each outcome or health behavior that is attributable to ACEs, even when we control for other factors. Okay? So that top long bar shows us that almost half of depression is attributable to ACEs. Almost a third of smoking is attributable to ACEs. Going on down, asthma, obesity, cardiovascular disease, so much attributable to ACEs, even when we control for other factors. But, again, pulling from the previous slide that ACEs account for almost half of depression in Tennessee. Interestingly, I was doing a presentation for a women's policy conference not too long ago, and we pulled this data that depression is one area where we see large differences between men and women in Tennessee. Again, what I think is so important about the science and this research is that understanding it enables us to see not just the challenges, but the incredible opportunities that we have to make for a brighter future for our families in Tennessee. Okay, but what's the punchline? You say, like, what is the economic impact of ACEs in Tennessee? And here it is. When we look at ACEs related medical costs and worker absenteeism costs, those are the 2 types of costs that we look at, Tennessee faces an annual impact of $5.2 billion, right? So that's a single year of impact we repeat year after year when we continue to have ACEs in Tennessee. So what does that mean? It means that when we prevent and mitigate ACEs for our children and youth, we have the opportunity to generate better outcomes across the board for everybody. Better outcomes translate to economic gains for our families and for our state. It also means that the work that you're doing to address ACEs matters, and it matters a lot when it comes to dollars and cents. Taking this back to our life continuum, what's the good news, or what's more good news? Every single one of these arrows represents a potential point of intervention. Almost every single point is an opportunity. So what I see in this work is hope, right? It's hope. All right, so I want to change gears as we kind of head into the final stretch here and talk about this metaphorical stream that we always hear about in policy discussions. In fact, I'll say one of my favorite details of Sycamore's logo design, see there on the right half of the screen, is the stream that's running beneath the tree. Because to me, it represents a nod to this idea that effective and sustainable public policy addresses not just the immediate downstream needs of a community or a state, but it also goes upstream in search of the root causes of the challenge to begin with. Upstream is where we have the opportunity to really shift the entire context of a problem. It gives us the chance to make changes that will hopefully help a broader group of people. Now, I told you that we would take a look at the model that Sycamore uses to analyze and explore this idea of upstream and downstream. And I'll say we use this both to dissect a problem and understand what's in there, but also to sketch out the possible solutions and policy options that are available to us when we want to act on addressing a problem. Now, what researchers will call this is the socio-ecological model. For today, I'm going to call it the "it's all related and we are all in this together" model. And to show you how it works, we can use a specific example. Again, I'm going to use youth smoking. So I use that example because in 2017, the CDC calculated that about 20% of Tennessee's high school youth reported currently using a tobacco product, and it was 9% were using cigarettes. And despite recent gains on this issue, tobacco consumption remains one of Tennessee's most seemingly intractable health behaviors. It drives a long, long list of deadly health outcomes, and it's usually a habit, later an addiction, that people initiate in youth. So how does the model work for analyzing both an issue and potential policy interventions? So I'm going to start at the bottom and the innermost circle, that light green there. And first look at the individual level factors that play a role in analyzing an issue or a solution. So for smoking, there are a host of factors at the individual level that drive a person's smoking behavior. So take, for example, genetic factors. Genetic factors can make a person more prone or less prone to addiction and adverse health outcomes from smoking. There's also an element of choice or personal responsibility. Every quitter will tell you that an element of individual agency both got them into the habit of smoking and helped get them out of that addiction. Individual agency is an important component of analyzing these kinds of complex problems. Now, of course, what choices or level of agency are available to an individual are often shaped by other upstream factors that may or may not be under the control of that individual. So take interpersonal dynamics, for example. Some people's decision about smoking may be swayed by whether or not they have friends or family that smoke. Maybe they have the support of a coach or a mentor or some other trusted community member to help them quit. Interpersonal relationships can be really influential factors over an individual's behavior. Going up one more level, kind of the middle mid-green there, we have the institutional level characteristics that can also be really important. So take, for example, workplaces or campuses that ban smoking in some areas. These bans could influence a person's decision about if, when, or how often to smoke. They can also affect the extent to which non-smokers are exposed. Moving up one more level to community characteristics, these also play a role. Some communities, for example, may be targeted more heavily by tobacco advertisements. On the other hand, some communities may have more or less access to smoking cessation services and supports. Any of these factors can influence decisions and behaviors around smoking. The last layer, the dark green one that encapsulates the whole thing, is the broader society level. And while public policy can be used to intervene at any of these levels, it is the broader societal level where it can be effectively used to shift the context of the problem for almost everyone. So for example, on smoking, we have state laws that set a minimum smoking age. We can levy a tax on the sale of cigarettes. Now, to the extent that these policy ideas are implemented and enforced, they can be effective tools for influencing whether and how much people smoke, and that ultimately affects the level of tobacco-related disease burden in Tennessee. When we talk about crafting interventions at these different levels, we're often talking about moving upstream or downstream. And upstream is where we have the opportunity to broadly affect the environments, the context, and the opportunities that shape the decisions that we make downstream that impact our health and prosperity. All right, so that's the "it's all related and we're all in this together" model. The other model that we use a lot in thinking about our vision for a thriving Tennessee is something we describe in the Roots of a Thriving Tennessee. And you can find a brief policy brief on this on our website, and it'll take you through the details. But here, why we decided to do this was realizing that we're not alone. Lots of folks do this. We have a long history of approaching important issues in silos, right? Now, why do we do this? Well, for one, we do it to simplify complexity and make messy problems more manageable. We also do it because we need specialists and experts to drill deep down into their areas of expertise and shed light on things that we could be missing. The roots of a thriving Tennessee is not about setting aside experts or making things more complicated than they need to be. It's about taking the time, like we do at Children's Advocacy Days, and zooming out to see the larger picture, the way different pieces of a puzzle are connected. And all right. So our vision of a thriving Tennessee is based on 4 central domains. And what's interesting, hang on. All right, we're back. So what's interesting about these 4 domains is that they are almost universally desired by all people, and each in and of themselves is worthy of pursuit. These are things I have talked to my kids about every day, my hopes and dreams for them. So what does the research tell us? The research tells us that children, families, businesses, and our entire economy thrive when people enjoy good physical and mental health. This is both the absence of disease and the opportunity to achieve optimal health. We also thrive when we have social connection, second bucket there. You know, all families need, all humans need family and friends and community. And for our youth, healthy social connection can happen in school, at extracurricular activities, in houses of worship, at community centers, and in closely knit neighborhoods too. Thirdly, we thrive when we have opportunities for personal satisfaction, right? To thrive, people need to make meaningful contributions to the world and to have the chance to develop strong character and to be good and kind people. I will say it is 100% true that my children behave better on weekends when they are helping out around the house, no doubt. Fourth and final bucket is financial security and opportunities for economic mobility and prosperity. Being able to secure our basic needs and plan for the future is a key component of thriving. These are the things that we all want for ourselves, for our loved ones, for the people we serve, and for our communities. Now, what I really like about this model is that it's a cross-cutting lens. It helps us resist thinking about important issues in silos. It helps us think more about how they are interconnected and mutually influential. Let's take the financial security and prosperity bucket and think about financial security, economic mobility, and health. Now, for some, education or the right technical training is and should be the highest priority for achieving gains in this category or this domain. That degree or certificate or apprenticeship is what they need to secure the kind of job they want, to get the kind of income they need to provide financial security and opportunities for mobility for themselves and their families. For others, on the other hand, having access to affordable healthcare, that's what's key. So many chronic diseases, for example, need regular management in high quality healthcare settings. Without access to care, those conditions can make it difficult to work and earn a living, take care of children and other daily needs. Ignored and untreated, those conditions can get worse and maybe even lead a person to needing to go to an ER. An emergency room visit can generate medical bills, which maybe they're not able to pay. And unpaid bills become medical debt, which can damage credit history and snowball into other negative health, educational, and economic outcomes. The roots of a thriving Tennessee are about being able to keep all of these factors in all 4 of these domains in mind at once. It's about seeing the many alternate paths that people take to achieve success and happiness in all of these domains. Okay, so kind of last little bit that I want to talk to you about this morning is about crafting, implementing, and refining effective policy that advances the well-being of children and youth. And what that means is really wrestling potentially with some new ideas. And they may be new ideas that we've never considered before, or they might be old ideas where new information has become available and we need to shift an old position in the face of that new information. It calls us to practice what we know about crafting good public policy. And these are the kinds of questions and elements that we ask ourselves when we're sitting down to craft new policy. First, we need to ask ourselves, what's the goal here? You know, what are we designing this program or policy to accomplish? For example, you know, we all want brighter futures for our children, health and education and economic well-being. But being specific about the goal is really, really helpful. You have to start with diagnosing and defining the problem. Now, does everybody agree that there is a problem? What are the different perspectives that might be around the table? Who are the stakeholders, right? Are there factions that have already organized or historically been for or against the idea that you might want to advance? Mapping out both the problem and the players, the people around the table, often helps capture the complexity in a manageable way. Now, it's also important to understand the history and context of an issue. Now, where did the problem come from? How has it evolved over time? And understanding what solutions that have been attempted, what's worked, what maybe hasn't worked, and why is an important part of the process. Now, next, we might ask ourselves, is the proposed solution effective for addressing the defined problem, right? Is the solution well fitted to the challenge that we identified during our diagnosis process? Sometimes good policy ideas unintentionally create or exacerbate other problems that then we have to go and solve. Now, we certainly always need to ask, what do the data and evidence tell us? Particularly if you're reconsidering an old idea, it's important to see if there might be new data or evidence that might shift past thinking around an issue. And grounding our policy decisions in data and research, really, that's what the Sycamore Institute is all about. We really believe that grounding good decisions in data and research makes them more durable over time and will better serve us as a state in achieving our goals. Now, lastly, good policymaking considers what the possible trade-offs are, right? So most proposals aren't perfect. They don't fully fix problems overnight. From idea conception to implementation, we are in a constant cycle of evaluating and considering trade-offs. And trade-offs aren't inherently good or bad. They're really just products of a robust policymaking process and something that we want to be able to talk about in a constructive and productive way. All right, so just to close us out here, using these principles for developing effective policy ideas, Tennessee can achieve better outcomes for our children and youth. We can get out of the bottom range of so many of the rankings that I showed you at the beginning. Recent examples of promising policies include evidence-based home visiting for young mothers and new babies. These offer a two-generation approach to preventing and addressing ACEs. They help educate new mothers on child development and sound parenting practices. And at the same time, they provide critical development checks for the infant. Expanding access to prenatal and postpartum care provides needed benefits to a young family during vulnerable times. And expanding access to school-based mental health. Right? We've seen a lot of discussion throughout the pandemic about the importance of making sure our children have access to services that meet their needs. And this will be particularly important throughout 2021 and beyond. These are all just quick examples. We could go on of really good policymaking going on that's gone through this process and looks to providing better outcomes for our children and youth. All right, in closing, the events of the last year have been difficult for just about every one of us on just about every front. My hope is that we are emerging from this moment better prepared to tackle really hard questions. My wish is that more than ever, we are more willing to address the specific barriers that Tennessee children and families are facing when they reach out for a future of thriving. We need to wrestle with how those barriers vary across different groups. Different races, different ethnicities, geographies, income levels. This week during Children's Advocacy Days, we have the opportunity to hit pause, right, to zoom out, and then to see how different pieces of the puzzle fit together. We have the opportunity to better understand how health affects our education outcomes, how ACEs impact our economic prosperity, and how we are all truly in this together as a state. There is no silver bullet solution for creating a thriving Tennessee. Our policy decisions are reflections of who we are as leaders and who we are as a state. So ask yourself, what do you want future generations of leaders to know about you? Thank you for your time and attention this morning. I know attention is precious, particularly during this land of Zooms and virtual everything. Thank you to Richard and the team at the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth for putting together this conference and the work that you do every day and have for decades. If you have questions or you just want to continue the conversation with Sycamore, here's how you can reach us and connect with us and the rest of the team. And enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks.
Laura, thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation. The work and research that you provide has been so helpful to us as an agency, and I'm sure many people here at CAD feel the same way. As we spend a few days focusing on advocacy and some of the 10,000 foot level challenges that impact children and families in Tennessee, we want to take a moment to thank and highlight our partners who are providing direct services to children. We know every single year there is work that is absolutely critical to the well-being of children, youth, and families in Tennessee, but particularly during this unprecedented year. The ways that they have adapted and gone above and beyond to ensure that children are safe and taken care of is inspiring, and we are forever thankful.
We hope you have enjoyed this first day of virtual Children's Advocacy Days. We're excited to have you all back with us tomorrow. I want to remind you that when you log in tomorrow, you will be placed in a lobby. With the volume of people logging in at the same time this morning, I understand some of you received a message that said you cannot access the room. Please be patient, and everyone will be admitted into the room at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Tomorrow, we will dive a bit deeper into some of the mental health challenges and opportunities in Tennessee with presentations from Deputy Commissioner Matt Yancey with the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. And we're very excited to have Dr. Dan Siegel with the University of California, Los Angeles School of Medicine. We also look forward to hearing from newer Commissioner Clarence Carter with the Department of Human Services and Dr. Monty Burks, who serves as the Director of Faith-Based Initiatives with the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. Again, thank you all so much for taking the time to be with us today. Thank you for your patience as we navigated this virtual platform, and hope that you found value in today, that it helps re-energize you, re-motivate you, and intrigues you enough to join us again for the rest of the week. So thank you all so very much, and we will see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.